Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today for Webinar 7 in our MSP Institute series. Today's topic focuses on how you divide your technical delivery into two distinct roles and how those two roles should work seamlessly together. I'm very pleased to have Jamie Smith, SolarWinds MSP's Senior Director of Sales Engineering with us to go through this topic for you guys. Jamie's been in the industry for a long time and has had the opportunity to work with all kinds of MSPs, so he's seen some technical service delivery best practices in his time, to be sure. He's also seen some things probably not done so well, so today he's going to talk to us about what you should be doing to be one of the best. Implementing some of his suggestions should lead to increased efficiency in your business, and that translates into more money for your business. So before I hand it over to Jamie, I do have a couple of housekeeping things to take care of as usual. First off, this session is being recorded and will be posted online for you guys shortly. If you don't already have a link to the site where these things go, just ask me for it in the question panel on the right-hand side, and I'll email you a link later today. Which leads me right into point number 2 very nicely, which is please feel free to ask questions as the session is running. You're all going to be muted. However, ask the questions in the question pane, and I'll either answer the questions immediately right there and then, or if they're a question that the whole group should hear, I'll save it and ask Jamie of it at the end of the session. Okay? With that, I will hand it over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Eris. So as Eris mentioned, one of the things that what we're going to cover on this webinar today is essentially the differences between a NOC and a service desk. I know a lot of MSPs today kind of combine the two functions, and with regards to providing service to your clients, it really depends upon your makeup, your agreements, and the type of service that you offer to your customers, which would allow you to differentiate between the two. When you do differentiate between the two, you assign proper responsibilities, usually ends up in a higher level of service to your clients, and people know what their purpose is with regards to the contracts that you offer to your customers. So what I'm going to do here today is go through a few slides with regards to definitions, differentiating between the two, some of the functions, some of the flow of information, processes, which are a big part of distinguishing the two functions, and then we'll go through some examples of how I've spent some time with one of the largest NOCs and service desks in North America, and just some of their tasks and how efficiencies could be gained by using an RMM solution like Incentro or RMM. So the first thing we're going to actually take a look at is a definition between the two. So a network operations center, or a NOC, is defined as one or more locations from which network monitoring and control is exercised over a computer, telecommunications network, or a satellite network. Okay? Whereas a service desk is a primary IT service within the discipline of IT service management, or ITSM, as defined by the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, ITIL, and is intended to provide a single point of contact to meet communication needs of both the users and the IT staff. So what does that mean? A NOC is usually a central point where its goal is to have all functions running 24/7. This would include things like data centers. Like I know a lot of MSPs will actually have a data center where you host services for clients. However, just because you have a data center doesn't mean that you actually have a NOC. So the NOC manages the infrastructure, the procedure changes, events, security, quality control and assurance, the RMM tools, the ticketing systems, the integration with customer tools, dashboards. And it's important that the technology that lies within the NOC is a big part of the NOC, but it's also the personality and the technical traits of the NOC staff itself, which help determine, or is a big factor in determining how successful your NOC is going to be. The ultimate decision on whether you actually need a NOC or not is dependent upon your size or your IT team size, the level of business criticality within the network, the degree of sensitivity on the managed data within the network. If you work within a regulated industry, And all of those things combined, and the services that you provide and the verticals that you provide services to, will help you as an organization determine whether or not you should break the functions out separately into a NOC and to a service desk. So the service desk itself, so that's essentially a NOC. The service desk itself is a term that essentially originated from ITIL. A lot of our MSPs and a lot of our customers will actually say they have a help desk or they have a service desk. And a lot of times there's not information that differentiates the two, on what is what. So help desk was born as a IT-centric during the mainframe computing stages, where it was essentially to solve a problem, okay? More of a reactive type service. A service desk is a single point of contact, as the definition says here, and it allows a customer to call one person, and they're going to provide a service to that customer rather than just fix their particular problem. So a help desk, there's a specific problem, creates the case is closed, whereas a service desk essentially provides more of a service from end-to-end customer satisfaction, goes through the whole problem, handles the escalation, and anything with regards to that specific issue comes back to that person. So it may seem a little bit petty, but many people will say that help desk provides help, whereas service desk provides service, and the focus is delivering on that service to the end users and providing that single point of contact. Now, two different types of NOCs. So we'll focus on the NOC first, and then we'll actually go to the service desk. But the two different kinds of NOCs and what you should be considering, depending upon your organization and the different types of clients that you service, is whether or not it's an internal or an outsourced NOC. So an internal NOC would essentially be for one organization, usually larger enterprises, multiple locations that are not only used for management of data centers where uptime and availability is a must, but also for things like an employee onboarding or password resets. So for example, SolarWinds as a whole, as an enterprise, has a NOC that provides those services to us as users within the SolarWinds organization. Now, a lot of MSPs will use an outsourced NOC, which is an outsourced service provider that supports multiple corporate and business networks that are comprised of dissimilar hardware manufacturers, operating systems, and applications across many vertical markets and locations, okay? So best-in-class service providers dedicate resources specifically for the purpose of running and managing the NOC. And that's where it comes to, excuse me, it's providing the responsibilities, the set of requirements to the NOC so that there's no confusion between the NOC and the service desk and the level of service and the responsibilities to the customers. Efficiencies and productivity are usually negatively impacted when resources are not dedicated to developing and managing the NOC, because it requires focus and dedication to fine-tune the tools, to choose the right tools, to make sure that they're completing the day-to-day tasks. And those day-to-day tasks are the things that you have spelled out in your agreement to your customers with expectations, and that's why it's important to have the processes in place. So it's not only applicable for all service delivery areas in the MSP, but also the responsibilities that a NOC may have outlined that we'll go through here. Okay, so the primary responsibilities: hardware, software applications, so all the hardware within the organization, making sure that that functions without downtime, preventative maintenance, different types of self-healing that would be set up and configured within the RMM, different types of information that's gathered pertaining to a specific problem, like an Exchange problem or a SQL problem, having the ability to gather all the information for that specific incident relating to that application so it can be fed within the process. Maybe it escalates to an engineer, for example. Maybe it's a ticket that's created with Microsoft. All of those procedures are documented within a NOC so that they know exactly the type of information that they need to gather and the process that they need to follow and where to escalate. So that way you're not wasting any time wondering, where do I go from here? Okay, so one of the most important parts of a NOC is making sure that processes are concrete. They can be refined and adapted, but they need to be defined in order to build upon them. Client onboarding and removal. Every MSPs will get some clients and they lose some clients. So what do you do when you get a new client? You make sure the network is prepped for install. You make sure that you have an inventory of machines, which includes hardware and software, like our first point here. You ensure that the customers that come on have the proper access. You make sure their passwords are set, different complexities. You make sure their desktop is set up, maybe their browser. All of that can be configured within the NOC so that when you bring on a new customer under a certain agreement, they know exactly what they're doing when they set up that client. And then, unfortunately, obviously, for removal of clients, when you have to offboard somebody, making sure the agents are uninstalled, the information that you do have is left for that specific organization, the whole process behind that. Patching. So ensuring that all machines, which not only includes desktops and servers, but also firewalls and routers, make sure the configuration is backed up, making sure that patching is done on those servers and those workstations. Ensuring you understand the customer's environment with regards to maybe some custom applications that they may be running. Ensuring that you have it documented that they can't be on the last version of Java, and you know that procedure. And the common theme here, and you probably noticed thus far, is documentation and procedures so that anybody within the NOC can look at it and it minimizes any mistakes. So antivirus, ensuring that antivirus is installed, functioning, scans are done, quarantines are working. Those are all functions of the NOC. Backup, making sure the documents are backed up, making sure there's images available, making sure there's an on-site copy, making sure there's a cloud copy, making sure there's a local copy. So all of this falls within the agreement that you have with your customer, whether it be, and I'm doing little air quotes here, a silver, bronze, or platinum type of offering will have a different set of procedures that the NOC has to have documented so they can easily onboard, and it takes the confusion out of the picture. Vendor communications and management. NOCs are going to be the most important part with regards to determining the tools that are actually being used and constantly doing trials and looking for betterment or better tools that are going to suit the function within the organization and suit your customers better. Whether or not how they communicate to the vendor. So they are usually the primary contact with regards to any problems within the software that they're using or any suggestions for bettering that software. In a lot of cases, cloud resource applications. So if there's anything in Amazon or anything in a virtual environment or a cloud environment like Office 365, though the NOC is usually responsible for ensuring that that's set up properly and handling the communications with Microsoft or Amazon for ensuring the correct resources are set or passwords are set. All of that, and installing it, configuring the email address. All of that are primary responsibilities of the NOC. And then, as we mentioned, test and research and assess new software tools, Maintain accurate records and timely controls. Communicate to the service desk and the rest of the organization. So those are all the primary functions that you see here pertaining to day-to-day, but then taking the NOC one step further, communication is an important part of ensuring the success, because anything that they find within the customer's environment, they have to ensure that they're communicating that to the account rep or the service desk if they need to escalate, and I'll have a couple of charts here that will go through some different escalations in a minute. But communication is an important part of a NOC to the rest of the organization, okay? They must follow the established processes and protocols, so you don't have, you may have a great NOC person, but you don't have every person within the NOC should be able to do each other's jobs. And the reason that is because the procedures are documented, and the difference between a great NOC person and a good NOC person is the great NOC person is always looking at repeatable things that they do on a day-to-day basis and trying to automate those things, okay? So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of the NOC when everything is documented. Agreements. So the agreements that a customer or that an MSP has with a customer will essentially dictate the level of service and dictate the services that are provided to that end user. So SLAs for the NOC are different from the rest of the service delivery team because they can be widely varied with regards to the realms of urgency, client impact, response time, as well as hours of operation. Typically, the NOC has responsibility for globally impacted SLAs like monitoring response times, management of software updates, as well as patches. So if you refer back to the last slide, a lot of their responsibilities are dependent or have different levels of urgency depending upon the agreement that you have with the customer. Okay? A key differentiator between a NOC's responsibility and the service desk responsibility, or how they interact, is that a NOC is less customer-facing than the service desk, okay? A NOC doesn't interface with clients. A service desk always interfaces with clients. So they are the person on the other end of the phone. And I always say, and I'll apologize if there's any NOC personnel listening to this presentation, but a great NOC person with a personality should be a service desk person, okay? I used to be a NOC person, so I can say that, but essentially the personality and the ability to interface with customers is a big part of any service desk, and it'll play nicely into your customer satisfaction surveys. Urgency, so if we define urgency within a NOC, it can vary based upon the service instance. For example, a monitoring alert comes in for a file server. The NOC team would be expected to immediately respond by contacting the client and let them know that there's an issue and confirm that they're working on the issue, okay? So file server, not urgent, but urgent enough, and they'll refer back to their agreement with the customer as to the parameters that they're working on to make sure that they provide that service or that deliver on the expectation to that customer. It can also be dependent upon the services agreement with your customer. So in this particular incident, the NOC team would do the preliminary troubleshooting or triage work, and if they can't solve it remotely, usually they'll have an escalation to an on-site team, or maybe in a lot of cases for your bigger clients, you may already have someone on site. So they escalate, gather all the information, escalate it, include all the relevant information in the ticket, and then the next step is to escalate to that on-site person. So all of this needs to be completed in the shortest amount of time possible, obviously. The other side of the spectrum are responsibilities which include completing pre-scheduled tasks like antivirus updates and patching. So making sure that the antivirus program is up to date, making sure that patches are up to date, but also taking into consideration the notes and the documentation for that customer when approving the patches. So high sense of urgency, high degree of importance. The middle of those both these extremes would be a call to action such as a pre-failure warning event. And we'll talk about the NOC's purpose in defining the service templates in a later slide. But something like a disk exceeding a pre-configured capacity limit at the time it was alerted and a server down, obviously are going to get two different types of priorities when a NOC is troubleshooting that issue. Response time and hours of operation should be addressed with the NOC. Most NOCs run 24/7, 365 days a year. So that goes back to an earlier slide with you as an organization. If you don't provide that level of service to your clients now, maybe you don't need a NOC. And those are the different types of questions that you need to ask yourself as an MSP. If you're looking to expand your services, then I definitely suggest in separating the NOC from the service desk, because you don't want to impact something that you have running optimally now, like all the functions within your service desk. You just start moving some of that responsibility to a NOC and define the responsibilities and the knowledge and the escalations within that NOC. Some typical client-facing SLAs that the NOC would be responsible for. Client notification of an issue within 5 minutes. Like every client's expectations, whenever you say you have a remote monitoring and management software, whether it's right or wrong, they get the impression that you're going to know of everything before they do, and that's okay. But if you don't call them and let them know, they're always going to second guess you. So an important part and a procedure and what's drilled into a NOC is once we find a problem, have a designated contact person that's going to call that person and say, we noticed this, or the contact person at the client, we noticed this, we're on it, we're troubleshooting, and give an expected either time to follow up or a time to resolution. Another example would be 85% of all workstations will have current antivirus signature updates deployed monthly. Notice it's 85% and not 99.9. There's going to be conditions where people go on vacation, where devices are turned off. You're not going to be up to date when somebody swapped out a machine or if new machines came into the network. And that's why you give them a realistic percentage, because 99.9% is not realistic, especially when you're dealing with clients that may have some control within their own network when it comes to adding new devices, having devices that expire, or maybe they go offline, okay? 100%, so that's workstations, but if you go into servers, you should be in control of your servers. So then we go up to 100% of servers will have patches applied within 30 days of release. And that allows you to provide a testing bed if you provide that service to clients, like a sandbox to try them out, excuse me, stagger the release, and then ensure that it's not going to impact the client. 100% of critical security patches will be deployed within 48 hours of release. These are all things that you could be set up, or that you can set up automatically within the RMM solution to provide and ensure that those SLAs are being met, that it would be the responsibility of the NOC to deal with any one-offs or situations where it didn't happen via an alert. And then they would follow the normal ticket procedure, falling back to the agreement that you have with the customer. Alert response times of less than 5 minutes. Service request average response time of less than 30 minutes. And then if you switch to backup, all related issues will be resolved within 24 hours. Now, I know that's a definitive statement, so they will be resolved. But when you're dealing with backup, patch, or antivirus, you need to be a little bit aggressive with regards to the expectations that you're setting for your customer, because these are things that they know they provide. With all the viruses and spyware and ransomware that's everywhere, like even if you're a lawyer or a doctor and you go to a medical conference, they hear about, or a lawyer's conference, they'll hear about it there. So they're educated enough to ask questions on that. So you need to make sure that you define that within your agreements to your customers to put any doubt at rest. Okay? Excuse me. Ticketing and workflow. So as I mentioned, from a NOC, the NOC provides a variety of services in the background that is essential for delivering service providers the service that they're promised or the product. So RMM and PSA, those are probably the two most important things for a NOC in providing the solutions to the clients. The RMM, when it comes to determining an RMM or the RMM that you provide to your customers, you need to look at the services that you're provided, but most importantly, how you can tweak those services. So if you look at any of the SolarWinds MSP RMMs, we've included default standards or templates that we consider to be industry standards. But every time I walk a client through the onboarding process, the first thing that I bring up is let's review our templates and make sure they work for you. Okay? So the NOC plays an important role in development of the service templates. So I would walk them through our default templates, make sure they align to the services, and then make any changes to establish a default before we deploy to customers. Service template development influences service ticket flow. If you have templates installed or running and they're monitoring services or alerting too quickly on things that you don't necessarily know how to troubleshoot, then it's going to waste a lot of time. Okay? Task completion and escalation, as well as providing effective performance reporting. So the services that are being monitored, the tasks that are being monitored, any remediation that's included in or on specific failures or warnings, and then having the ability to report upon it. Those are all important parts of any RMM solution. Service providers will often develop their own installation templates, as I mentioned. We go through that in the onboarding, make sure it works for you. And what I found in a lot of different scenarios, if you don't do this step, I usually talk to the NOC personnel, or I talk to the MSP a little bit later when they have too many things alerting within their dashboard, and then they're looking for a cleanup, and that's when they do it. So it's a lot better making sure, especially if you have a NOC or a designated NOC, that you do review the templates and make sure they make sense to you. Templates are often developed and stored in the PSA ticketing system, for example, MSP Manager, and it also can include the documentation templates and configuration templates. So the PSA you can also look at as a knowledge base that has all the different steps. And within the PSA solution itself, a lot of times you can actually map out your procedure, which takes some of the human error out of the equation. So anything that you can automate from a PSA perspective or an RMM solution to perform actions, do it, because it's going to have a whole lot better chance of actually being done correctly than if you have human interaction. The importance of having templates is that there's a procedure documented to troubleshoot the specific problem. So it's one, to decide and communicate on the template itself, but then if something alerts, what do you do with that alert? And that's where taking it to the next level and defining the NOC procedures. So if I get an alert for a disk failure for a bronze customer, what do I do? Okay? So it takes the guesswork out of it, and it takes, if the ticket comes into technician A and this person's a great troubleshooter, seen this problem before, then maybe they can fix it better or fix it faster. But with the procedure established and constantly revamping your procedures and becoming more efficient to your procedures, that ticket should be able to go to anyone within your NOC staff, and you should get the same level of service. Okay? Ticket organization. Is the service ticket a result of monitoring alert or a warning? A client-initiated request or an internal request within your organization? Once again, falling back to whether or not it's an internal or an outsourced NOC. Ticket categorization, identification of the type of ticket. Is it a routine ticket? So is it a ticket based upon what we were talking about earlier? 85% of all workstations will be patched within the first week or first month. If you can have a ticket automatically generated for that, so that it can provide the checkbox that rolls into your reports and you can show it to your customer. Ticket prioritization, back to, and once again I'm doing the air quotes, silver, bronze, and platinum offering. How within those offerings, how quickly do you have to respond? Okay, 24/7 mission critical platinum customer is going to get prioritization over a silver level 9x5 customer. Okay, ticket aging. So if a ticket's available for so long, how long before it starts to bubble up? And you can set those rules for escalation depending upon your agreement with your customer, and they can all be set within your PSA. Ticket flow. How does the ticket flow within the organization? Once again, that can all be defined as well, and that's something that you need to work out as an organization. You need to make sure that everybody's on board with regards to the flow. There's no questions, no doubts, and everybody knows what they're supposed to do. The NOC deals with more notifications than anybody. The primary responsibility is the NOCs. With every notification, whether it's an alert or a warning, RMM or in Central during client onboarding, responding to alerts, that's all NOC staff. They're responsible for initial triage, hopefully solving the problem, but if not, determining where it goes from the NOC. And that, with regards to standardization, deployment, and configuration, a lot of MSPs, when they get a monitoring and management solution, even though we offer to walk through the templates, don't take the time. And what we do have, as I mentioned before, is what we consider to be industry standard. But the reality is, everything that's set up within the templates, or everything that can be monitored, is probably the best way I can put it, doesn't necessarily need to be monitored. Okay? And it's easier to look at this initially than after the fact because you don't have all the cleanup. Okay? Automation. We have a great program called Automation Manager. We have pre-configured automation policies all within there. Big part of the NOC is automating tasks. Those things that were traditionally done manually, setting up an automation policy or a script, having that run automatically, and configuring the system to do the work for you rather than it revolving around man hours. And obviously that's going to increase tech utilization as well. Notifications, so using delays, multiple failures, self-healing remediation, and only create the ticket if it's needed, okay? But also make sure that you run the report on all the things that were automated so that you can show the customer what you're doing. Another fear within a service desk and a NOC is, excuse me, a lot of things get taken care of by the NOC behind the scenes, and the customer doesn't see them, okay? So that's why it's a necessity to make sure that they're all documented, lined up, and able to be reported upon and shown to the customer as a line item, because if not, they'll start to wonder exactly what you're paying for, and if they need to cut budget, you may be one of the first things that are gone, okay? Tips, so maintaining a knowledge base and process, so articles specific to particular scenarios and environments. Like, gone are the days where one technician knows inside and out a particular customer's profile. They may be the liked person and the primary contact, but if that person goes on vacation, you need to make sure that Jimmy can actually troubleshoot that problem in their absence. And that's where it comes down to documentation and procedure, and not leaving yourself at risk if that person, like I said, goes on vacation, or even worse, gets hit by a bus. So feedback to information to account managers, adjusting and tweaking the client, all responsibility of the NOC. With regards to a procedure or the process, so you can see here we talked a lot about alerts and PSA solution and how things get routed. So if you look here, monitoring alerts received, the ticket is created, then the NOC looks at it. Okay, is it an actual issue or is it a false positive? If it's false, they close the ticket. If it's true, they assign it to a specific individual and it's triaged. So all the information at this point is gathered. They look at the profile of the device or the application, the symptoms, do some automation on it, gather all the information. The issue is then identified. Now this is the turning point here. Does that specific user or customer need to interface with a human? If they do, it goes to the service desk. If they don't and it can be solved remotely, the NOC starts troubleshooting. Then the NOC will carry it to as far as they can take it, okay? Hopefully solve the problem, but if they can't, they'll escalate to an on-site person. The on-site person may interface with the service desk if the knowledge is not there, so then these two groups start to work with each other. And if there's no on-site required, they'll escalate within the NOC itself. So maybe your NOC is set up for specific functions at a higher level. Maybe you look after a specific vertical or you have a vertical team. Whatever which way, you can actually take a look at it, do within a NOC escalation. Then the issue is resolved. Client follow-up is done, whether it's through account manager or an automated email for client satisfaction. And then you end in the same result, which is actually having the ticket closed. Okay? Excuse me. Now, as I mentioned, for a NOC, there's different skills, and especially if you're building one from scratch. The skills or staffing of a NOC, and you may look at these and like, well, I look for these for anything I hire, but more specifically for a NOC, you need to look at the personality traits of that specific person. The size of the service provider and the responsibilities assigned to the NOC team will influence the type of personality traits, technical skills, or technical abilities of the particular staff that you're looking to hire. If the service has a private label, or if you have a private label cloud or hosting business, then the NOC would have someone with virtualization and security experience. If you do remote backup, they would need experience in that. Each service provider will need to determine the qualifications of their NOC based upon their business model and what services they're going to offer to the customer. So the ability to work unsupervised. If you're doing 24/7, then somebody's going to have to work when the majority of people have left the office. So they need to be able to work independently and have a passion for technology. So want to do better with every task that they're given. Reliable, inquisitive about technical capabilities and software tools. Question what you're using. Look for better solutions. Present the case back to someone who can make a decision. Script writing. I know of MSPs that have actually challenged their staff and provided incentives to anybody that could automate specific tasks. So they would look at common procedures, things that were soaking up a lot of man hours, and challenge their staff that if they could automate this, and it ran for like, I think it was 3 months, they would compensate them as a certain percentage of time gained against build time, or sorry, technical utilization gain as compared to build time. So it's a pretty good incentive for somebody looking to make a few extra dollars and start to challenge. Database management skills. If you manage any SQL, Oracle database, obviously you need that skill set. And that skill set follows through for everything that you're going to do. So monitoring templates, the services that you're going to monitor, any automation that's set up, database queries, those are the skills that you need. Security skills, software and hardware troubleshooting, oral and written communication skills. This is very important because anything that you document obviously needs to be repeatable. And in order for it to be repeatable, the next person that reads it needs to understand it, okay? Some management experience, like team leads within the off shifts, detail-oriented, work under pressure, have the appropriate knowledge and certification, as well as a team player. So I know that seems like a standard subset of traits that people would look for when they're doing a hire, but in a lot of cases, it's actually not. So that's why it's worth documenting and reviewing when you're actually looking for a specific NOC personnel or a specific technician. Customer access. How does the customer access the NOC? Well, since they don't interact with them directly, it would be either an email or like a call to the service desk to escalate to the NOC, or a web portal where the tickets would actually be created, okay? And then workflows and training, always constantly looking to improve upon the current process and making sure the documentation's up to speed, and then having a weekly meeting where everybody gets in and reviews the changes and approves them, so people are not looking at something and say, oh, it used to be like this, who changed this? So ensuring that all the staff is up to date with regards to the procedures, with regards to the service, and with regards to the clients and their expectations. Now, if we look at the next slide here, these are just some examples of the different functions, excuse me, and how the RMM could actually help. So if we look at onboarding, so what does onboarding mean to you? Ensuring that the OS is set up, the applications, the corresponding managed services agreement, or sorry, what is being set up is corresponding to the managed services agreement. The services and thresholds are installed and working. The applications are installed and all configured. So what would a NOC personnel actually do in order to get this going? They deploy the agents either through discovery, script, or group policy. Ensure monitoring is applied correctly. So we already have our template set up. So essentially, once the agent goes out, it can apply the appropriate monitoring. Apply different settings based upon managed services agreement with the customer. Set a local and admin password just to make sure, in case things messed up, that you have access into that machine. Provide asset reporting and install the appropriate software. Okay? So a lot of these things actually came from, like I said, visiting one of the largest NOCs in North America, and it was actually put together for them, or in association with them, where they could gain efficiencies from the RMM. So to save on this time, run a discovery on the network, ensure that the network is prepped, so make sure that the agents actually can be deployed. If there's different service levels offered, make sure that the templates and the assigning of those templates will actually be automatically applied based upon whatever settings you have. And ensure tasks are automated based upon the service level. So maybe you have different service levels broken out and have those templates applied either by customer or by site. And you can do that by setting up the default templates or using filters, for example, or rules, okay? Patching and updates. So maybe as a part of that program, you ensure that all Microsoft applications as well as third party are up to date within the constraints or within what you define as an acceptable service level to those customers. So patch all Windows OS's, third party, Mac, as well as custom applications. Here's the key here. Configure whatever you can to be automatic. So a lot of people will do all security patches or critical patches to be automatically deployed to customers. Okay, so that takes the work out of that. Then patch Mac operating systems based upon settings. Make sure they're pre-vetted. And then use scheduled tasks or tasks within the application to find a specific version and schedule the update using automation. Antivirus. So ensure that it's running any malware, the profiles are configured. Ensure that you're setting up the update server, the scan jobs are set up. Remove the other AV if you need to. And if you have that set up within the RMM tool itself, all of this can be automated essentially by just checking a box, establishing the profile, and it'll take care of it for you. Ensure business continuity through the backup of critical data, so setting the backups. And then you may have, once again, a silver, bronze, and platinum offering as it comes to backup. So do you need 3 copies of the data, 2 copies of the data? Is there a local speed vault? Is it a host or an individual backup? How do we handle applications that are open or left idle? All of that can be automated so that tasks are killed prior to backup, and then you can also set up a direct link to remote control to verify that within your PSA solution if you are working from your PSA solution. Then managed audit, so vulnerability and PCI HIPAA scans monthly, which can be done through the risk intelligence tool, and set up the scans to be reoccurring so that your information is always up to date, and essentially all you have to do is automatically send the report to your customers. So these 5 things here, although they seem very simple and very common, a lot of organizations don't have them set up. And that's why I mentioned them as obvious improvements that you could set up by defining this as a NOC function rather than a service desk or an engineer function. Now the service desk. So I thought the best way to essentially define or differentiate the NOC from the service desk, I know I did a little bit on the first slide, but the service desk is primarily a reactive service. The IT support capability was born in the 80s, and it was essentially the fix issues, okay? There was no targets for the fixes, and immediate fixes were infrequent. Help desk answers the phone, logs a ticket, and assigns it to someone. So almost like a customer service or someone essentially with not a whole lot of technical knowledge, but someone able to provide a voice to the customer. The service desk was an evolution to the help desk. So it's within the ITIL framework and based on the underlying concept of managing IT as a service, and that's where service comes from, okay? And a subset of the service desk capabilities by some limits the scope by statements such as the evolution of a help desk to a service desk. So if you're just providing someone on the other end to answer the phone, gather your details, and log a ticket, and then escalate to someone else, it's a help desk. But if someone's a single point of contact, like we mentioned earlier, and they have the ability to troubleshoot and be your liaison for the whole problem, then that defines it as a service desk. And I thought it's important to actually mention that again before we go through the differences actually between a NOC and a service desk. So service desk is primarily a reactive service, whether a ticket's being created online, someone calls up. Excuse me. The service desk has many KPI requirements relating to customer satisfaction, relating to, you know, how quickly they answer the phone, the amount of time that it actually takes to provide a resolution to the customer. The service desk is customer focused and comprised of people with interpersonal skills, business awareness, and service-oriented perspective. In general, it's very hard to find people with these 3 traits, but when you do find someone, keep them, because even personality is a very important part of any service desk, because when someone calls up, they're not calling up to tell you you're doing a great job. They're calling up because something's broken. A lot of times they're somewhat angry. So you need somebody that actually can answer the phone, sympathize with them, diffuse the problem, and then fix the problem. And that's why someone on a service desk needs to be able to disarm the customer, but also show value and be compassionate with them. The service desk is the primary user of the incident management process. It owns all incidents, irrespective of where they are or how they're identified or how they're logged. They respond to service requests and request fulfillments. Typically, the service desk works on individual client issues. So that's that single point of contact again. And the service desk priority is not preventive maintenance. It's interfacing directly with the customer. And in a lot of cases, the service desk is looked at as the face of the company because they are so client interfacing. And it's somebody that the client will talk to usually at least once a week, if not more. Typical process for the service desk. So if you look here, a service request is received, whether it be a web portal, end user, client, calling, however you have set up in order, automatic email to create the ticket, and the service desk person will actually triage the specific problem. Goes to a level 1. Level 1 is usually responsible for gathering the information, doing some initial troubleshooting, and then deciding how they escalate. So level 2 is deeper, for maybe focused on specific areas. Level 3 has the ear of development or of engineering, and along the way, each level will gather specific information. If the level 1 person looks at it, the issue is resolved if it's a problem relating to what they can fix. If not, you can see here through level 2 and level 3, they gather information, go to here, and go to here, and escalate from here. A lot of times they will also escalate to the on-services team if they need someone to be the feet on the ground and be in front of the customer, and then from here they'll actually resolve the ticket as well. So this would be a typical example of how a service request will flow throughout a service desk, okay? And the key thing here is that whoever owns the ticket follows it through the process and provides that constant contact back to the user. Some examples of different services or top call drivers: connectivity or ping check. When you have connectivity and the efficiencies that can be gained. So a connectivity or ping check will fail on a server or on a network device. Common root causes that are not related to, excuse me, common root causes that are not related to a specific problem. So someone changed the IP address of the server, so it doesn't know where to ping. Network devices are not pre-configured to restart over a power failure, so that causes a failure. Or more commonly, a machine is doing a backup when we actually ping the device, or is actually ignoring the packets that are sent, which represent a failure. Okay, time to troubleshoot something like that, usually around 20 to 25 minutes. How can efficiencies be gained from that? Like if I was a part of the service desk, before the ticket even got created, and this is where I'm talking about setting up delays or making sure there's a failure actually present before we create a ticket, is like on failed connectivity, execute a self-healing or automated task, set the notifications accordingly so that we're sure it's an actual failure before it creates that ticket. Services. A lot of people will look at all services in an automatic state. And the way they look at it, if it's important enough to be in an automatic state, then we should be monitoring. What causes some problems is when engineers have too much control. So they're removing or editing, and these are usually the on-site people, applications without communicating, or password changes on a specific service that should be running. Application problems, whether there's corruption or something got removed. Time to troubleshoot. Conservatively, like 15 minutes. Here's how we can set up some efficiencies. So set remediation to automatically restart the service. If it's important enough to monitor, it should be important enough to automatically restart. And the exception would be in something like SQL or Exchange, because it could be related to a bigger problem. So in those cases, If a service fails, maybe set up an automation policy to grab a bunch of specific metrics that you would traditionally look for manually so that you can troubleshoot faster, okay? Find some alerts for important services through the PSA, maintain the lists. So if you have a common problem, search for it within the PSA. Chances are somebody's solved it before. And then an easier way to create downtime for engineers or on-site staff that are performing maintenance to make sure the ticket never does get created, and we know why. Alerts to be sent out if the CPU is above 95%. Maybe the machine is under provision, something else is installed, and Exchange and SQL are hogs on resources. Or maybe there are too many applications installed. So when you get that alert, it usually takes about 20 minutes to troubleshoot. So, you can set an automation policy to kill all processes that are acceptable when the CPU is at a spike, okay? Adjust your thresholds on your specific services. Maybe we know this is a tax device. We've notified the client, but they don't want to do anything about it. So maybe we turn off our thresholds or adjust our thresholds so we don't get alerted on it anymore. We've done our due diligence. We've provided the solution to the customer, and they signed off on the fact that they were aware of it, and we're no longer responsible for it. Disk space. So disk space can be checked every 15 minutes. It's one of those daily service checks, okay, where percentage used and availability are monitored and managed. You can look at how they're, well, typical failures are on older, smaller machines. Maybe somebody copied a large set of files, and the thresholds are not applicable for large disks. So that's where it comes back to looking through your service templates again. Once again, 20 minutes to troubleshoot. Automation that can be set up for this. And if you look at these tasks here that I'm looking at automating, these are tasks that a lot of customers will actually do manually. So that's all I'm doing is looking at the manual solution and looking at how I can automate it. So maybe you obtained a list of directories that you know blow up, like the temp files, and you know you can automatically delete those. Use direct support or remote background to update disk statistics and do a cleanup that way. So that way you don't have to interface directly with the user, you don't have to notify them, you're just cleaning up their disk for them, and you can document that in your report. Agent status, so device is not checking in, whether that was because of software failure, upgrade, devices have been moved, or antivirus blocking it. So take a look at the tickets being removed, ensure the ticket is created, deploy the agent from the probe or network discovery, depending upon your RMM, and then train on the proper procedure within your NOC or your service desk on how to actually replace an agent, okay? And you'll notice some common themes there, and have that distributed amongst your staff so that when there is a problem, everybody's not wasting this 15 or 20 minutes or 25 minutes troubleshooting. They know exactly what the procedure is. Some more VPN issues. So can't remember the password through the VPN. The VPN application is not installed. Problem with the firewall. So you can use the domain management and automation to reset the password. In central RMM monitoring can be checking the VPN status. Office 365 problems, and I'm not going to go through all those, but essentially it's the AD management, printing issues, internet issues, and the whole point of these two slides were to identify the top call drivers and look at how the RMM and the NOC differentiated from the service desk or the service desk can gain efficiencies on the most common calls, okay? And how the software can help you in increasing utilization and providing a higher level of service to your customers. And that was the whole point of showing you these last two slides on different functions of how you can become more efficient by using some of the automation as it relates to your top call drivers. So that's everything I wanted to cover here today in our NOC versus Service Desk webinar. Eris, do you have any questions? Anybody ask any questions there?
Yeah, we have a few. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so I will email everybody after, and I'll get with you, and we'll get some questions answered for them, and I'll send it all to them directly, because we're right at the 1 hour mark now, so we kind of have to go. So I really want to thank everybody for joining us today. Jamie, I want to thank you for taking us through this topic in as much detail as you did. Really appreciate that. Guys, make sure you join us on the next webinar. Really a great webinar on taking a checklisted approach to going to market, making sure you've got all your ducks in a row before you get out there and get it done. Should be a pretty good topic for everyone, and we'll be posting all of these webinars and subsequent videos and other materials online. More to come on that shortly. If you don't know where that website is, again, throw in the question on the right-hand side, and we will get it answered for you. I'll send out an email that shows you where to go to get all of our content. All right. With that, I thank everyone again, and Jamie, and we will talk to you guys all in a couple of weeks on that next webinar. Thanks for joining.